What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking our top 5 big name players that are likely to bust or regress for the 2023 fantasy football season. These are all household names that, for one reason or another, we think are going to struggle this year. So make sure to tune in. If you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe. Give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comment section you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have. We will do our best to answer them all. But with that being said, let's get right into it. And as you can see, we have got the rankings for the 2023 season on Fantasy Pros here pulled up. Now, honestly, doesn't really matter what format you're looking at, standard or PPR. These are guys that we're going to be avoiding one way or the other. So I do just want to mention that right out of the gate. But with that being said, let's get into this thing. And the first name that I want to mention is one Mark Andrews of the Baltimore Ravens. Tight end, pretty much almost unanimously number 2. I know some people have gotten a little bit cheeky and, have had like TJ Hawkinson as the number 2 guy, but typically it's Mark Andrews. But let's talk about why we think he's going to be a guy that is going to bust and, somebody you're better off avoiding. So first and foremost, I think that what we have to just agree on with the tight end position is, even though like it's only one name, Travis Kelce is the top guy, and after him, there's already a huge gap. Like, sure, maybe this might be Travis Kelce's last year where he's relevant, but even with that being the case, there's such a huge drop after Kelce from consistency, from yardage, from touchdowns, just pretty much from top to bottom. And Mark Andrews is no exception. And, I feel like that has honestly been the MO for Mark Andrews since he has been in the league. It's been up and down performances. Like, okay, 2 years ago, he was great. And then last year, one of the most frustrating guys that you could own. And, what's weird to me is he's still being drafted like at the end of the second round, maybe early third round. And I just don't want to do that. Like, if I don't draft Travis Kelce, then I'm simply waiting on the tight end position until at least like, the 5th round, something like that. So I think Mark Andrews is no exception, but let's go over more of the reasons of it just being, him being inconsistent, him not being Travis Kelce. So first and foremost, he's on an offense with Lamar Jackson that typically up until now has been run heavy. And because of that, there's just not as many passing opportunities for Mark Andrews or really for any of these other pass catchers on the team. And if you're in the camp that says, okay, the Baltimore Ravens are saying that they're going to pass the football more, they're going to limit Lamar Jackson more as a rusher. I mean, they still got a slew of running backs there that they could feed the ball to, so they don't necessarily, skew the percentages of pass to run. So that's one thing I would point out. But the other main thing here to me, even if they all of a sudden become more pass happy, you have to, worry about Lamar Jackson and him staying healthy, which undoubtedly so, since his MVP season has been an issue. So you've got those question marks at the quarterback position, which makes everything else go. But for the Baltimore Ravens, they made a lot of moves this offseason. They added Zay Flowers, they signed Odell Beckham, and they're getting back a healthy Rashad Bateman. So those are pretty much 3 guys that didn't contribute last year when Mark Andrews was, as a result, the top guy. And he was so up and down. Now, yes, again, Lamar Jackson was hurt for a portion of the season, but even then, Mark Andrews should have been getting like consistently solid outings. That wasn't the case. And now there's going to be more redistribution of the football. Mark Andrews is used as a blocker as well. That has me really, really worried at the tight end position. Like, I'd much rather at his current draft capital of like a late second rounder, take a chance on, like an Amon-Ra St. Brown or an A.J. Brown. Those guys are typically there in that range, or like, a Garrett Wilson, somebody like that. So for all those reasons, I really am out on Mark Andrews. I just don't see that big of a teardrop between like him, George Kittle, Dallas Goedert, TJ Hawkinson, whereas, in a lot of people's eyes, Andrews is by far and away ahead of them. So I also do think just the way he's being evaluated is also part of the problem. But let's move on here after Mark Andrews. I want to get to a name that I kind of had on my list last season as well, but I'm going to bring him up yet again. That is one Aaron Jones of the Green Bay Packers. And look, for Aaron Jones, he's yet another year older. So, that's never a friend for the running back position. But here it starts and ends, in my opinion, with the quarterback position. Aaron Rodgers, no longer there for the Green Bay Packers. You saw last season how inconsistent up and down Aaron Jones was when Rodgers was still on the team. Now without Aaron Rodgers, an unproven Jordan Love, this offense is going to be one of the biggest question marks in the NFL. And from what I've seen in Jordan Love, it's tough for me to get excited about him as a guy that can lead the Packers to being competitive game in and game out. So if we follow that thought process, the Packers could potentially find themselves down in a lot of games, which means they're going to have to abandon the run. Now, yes, I understand Aaron Jones is a good pass catcher, but they've also added some other pass catchers here at the wide receiver position, at the tight end position. So I'm not all that sure that just because of the pass catching ability, that's going to save Aaron Jones's value. And then let's not forget, you've got a younger A.J. Dillon that's arguably just as capable. Now, maybe not in the pass catching category, but he's going to vulture you in the short yardage situations. He's also somebody that's a great red zone threat, so he's going to take away touchdown opportunities, and that's so important, especially for guys that are kind of inconsistent. And I think that's what we have here with Aaron Jones. I'm really out on him. He's a guy that's probably going around like the third-ish round. Depends, how much the running back position is valued in your league. Maybe fourth round, but still, I would much rather just pass on Aaron Jones. If you ask me who would I rather have, like an Aaron Jones or a Miles Sanders, who just happens to be the next running back here on Fantasy Pros rankings, I'm taking Miles Sanders all day, every day. It's not even close. Aaron Jones just has way too many things working against him. So for that reason, I am passing on him this season. And I mean, even if you compare it to last year, we kind of saw that regression. So I think it's going to be even more apparent this season. Now, let's move on to here two names that are a little bit lower down the list, but I think two names that are very big, hot topic names at this point in time. One is Dalvin Cook. And I'm going to preface this, I know he's a free agent. And spoiler, the next guy that I'm going to mention is also a free agent, so you probably know who it is. But with Dalvin Cook obviously being released by the Minnesota Vikings, he can now go in a lot of different places. And to some extent, that's why he's so low on this list, because he is still a free agent. And once he finds a home, he will go up. But if you look at all the possible destinations where Dalvin Cook could end up, and supposedly the type of money that he wants, I'm a little bit worried because, a lot of people have said the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins pretty much are the 49ers 2.0 at the running back position. Like, they're going to use whoever they have. They've already got a slew of guys that they added last year in free agency. They've drafted talent. And now if Dalvin Cook goes there are just too many cooks in the kitchen, pardon the pun, but I think that's one of the worst spots that Dalvin Cook could end up in. There's also been talks of him like kind of being that veteran guy, backup or like 1A, 1B type of situation. Basically, at the end of the day, I do not think that there is going to be a single place for Dalvin Cook that was as good of a situation as that of the Minnesota Vikings. And I think once he lands on a team, a lot of people are going to kind of get back on the bandwagon and say that he's somebody that should be a borderline top 15 running back. But with him, I also worry about durability. I think last year there was serious signs of concerns. Now, some people are going to say, oh, that's because he got injured. How serious was the injury? I mean, if it was super serious, you can argue that he shouldn't have been playing to begin with, that it was manageable. And throughout the year, there's going to be nicks for all players, especially at the running back position. So you're never truly going to be 100% healthy. I mean, if you look at his production, like in the second half of the season, Dalvin Cook did not have a single 100+ yard rushing performance, which is extremely worrisome. On top of that, I mean, look, he had a lot of games where it was like one big play or like a couple touchdowns that saved his performance. So it's tough for me to get excited about Dalvin Cook. We don't know the destination. And unless it is the absolute perfect fit, which I think right now, probably just kind of thinking about it, might be like the Buffalo Bills would be the optimal destination. But I don't know. Like if he ends up with the Dallas Cowboys, he's there with Tony Pollard. If he ends up really anywhere, so many teams now have the number one guy or are trending towards a running back by committee. That's why I'm worried about Dalvin Cook. So I am passing on him. I think his best days are behind him. And speaking of another free agent, I already kind of tipped my hand, but DeAndre Hopkins, former Arizona Cardinal, being released by Arizona. And it's really funny to me because, at the start of the process, when he was doing these interviews that led to him being like released and kind of us realizing that he's unhappy, it was, oh, at this point in my career, I just want to play with potentially like Super Bowl caliber quarterbacks. And then he lists Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, those type of big names. And the two biggest places he's visited have been the New England Patriots and the Tennessee Titans. Like, are you kidding me? That is such a huge step below those other teams that he mentioned. It's not even funny. So I really think, depending on how much he wants to make, again, he is not going to end up in the ideal situation. I think at the end of the day, he probably ends up chasing money, if we want to put it bluntly. Now, I will say I am more in on DeAndre Hopkins than I am on Dalvin Cook, because I do think he is talented, but he's had, those same like injury concerns, durability concerns as Dalvin Cook. Now, the wide receiver position doesn't take as big of a beating as that as the running back position. So that is something to keep in mind. I still think you can be a very, very good wide receiver, at like 30, 31 years old. I mean, just look at Devontae Adams. So DeAndre Hopkins does have the potential, but I just think the landing spots are going to be such a huge thing here. And right now, the way it's trending, I don't think he's going to end up on, one of these top-notch teams with a like Super Bowl type of quarterback. And like, even if he does, if he ends up with Buffalo or something like that, he's got to contend with Stephon Diggs. If he ends up with the Philadelphia Eagles, sorry, they've already got A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. So a lot of rosters are already set. Unless he goes to a team that releases somebody that has an injury or that's a young up-and-coming team, it's going to be tough for him to get the same type of volume that we saw in Arizona and then in Houston. So for that reason, I think, again, with DeAndre Hopkins, who's being like drafted in arguably like the 4th round, I would rather pass on him, at least until I for sure know the situation with the team that he ends up on. But let's wrap this up now with the 5th, kind of big name on this list, and it's another wide receiver. It is Mike Evans of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And honestly, here, you could swap out Mike Evans for Chris Godwin. You can have both of them here. Imagine it, Mike Evans / Chris Godwin. But it's as simple as this. No more Tom Brady. Well, sorry, I just do not believe in Baker Mayfield, who, the way this thing is trending, is projected to be the number 1 quarterback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We've seen it in Carolina, him struggle. We've seen it with the Rams. We've seen it with the Browns. I just don't think that Baker Mayfield has got it. I mean, I don't know what other way to say it. I think that streak of 1,000+ yards ends here for Mike Evans. And I think it's going to be a long and frustrating season for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't think the volume is going to be there. I don't think the big touchdown upside is going to be there because this offense is going to struggle getting in the red zone. And, Mike Evans is also getting up there in age. So to me, it's a situation that I really don't want anything to do with. Like, even with Tom Brady at certain points last year, Mike Evans, he's also, pretty much the prototypical standard suited wide receiver. So in PPR, he's not going to get the massive volume unless a Chris Godwin is injured. He's not going to get peppered with targets. So you're relying on the touchdowns. You're relying on the deep balls, on the big yardage gains. I don't see that with Baker Mayfield here. You could say the exact same thing with Chris Godwin, even though I do think his upside is a little bit lower because I think he's just going to get more volume. That's the type of wide receiver he is. That's the way he's used. But at the end of the day, I just don't trust any offense with Baker Mayfield potentially at the helm. We saw what he was for the Panthers last year, and they had some decent weapons. DJ Moore didn't exactly thrive with him. So Mike Evans, last big name wide receiver here on this list that we are avoiding for the 2023 fantasy football season. But with that, we wrap up this breakdown of our top 5 big name players that we think are going to bust, that we think you should be avoiding because they're going to regress for the 2023 fantasy football season. Hopefully, you guys thought this was useful. If you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe. Give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear it in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree? What other names would you put on this list? And make sure to keep an eye out for, updated lists like this as we get closer to the start of the season. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.